Welcome back to Hudson Appliance in beautiful downtown Hudson, Massachusetts for another episode of Wicked Good Food. I'm your host, Matt Williams, and today we're talking about pate choux. So that might seem like some crazy French word and it might be intimidating, but once you see how we make it, you're gonna love to make your own homemade eclairs at home and profiteroles and cream puffs. So what we're going to make is a paste. It's not really a dough, it's kind of a paste. Our goal when we cook it is it's gonna puff up with a big bubble in the middle that we can fill with stuff. So we're gonna start off by making our pate choux. So let me turn up our heat here. I have about a cup of water. To this, I'm going to add about 6 tablespoons of butter. We're gonna let that fully melt. So with this dough, you can actually make sweet or savory. So we're gonna make some of each today. For this one, we're gonna do sweet. So we're gonna go about a tablespoon of sugar and just a generous pinch of salt, because you always want a little bit of salt when you're doing sweet things. And we want to let this come to a full simmer. Our goal here is that the butter will melt and not just be floating on the top as it is now, but it'll actually, when you have that convection movement, the butter will totally distribute throughout the water. So in the meantime, I'm going to crack some eggs. So our goal here is we want to get as much egg into this without making it super wet as possible. The reason for that is because that's going to help us to have beautiful, light, fluffy, finished pate choux or choux paste. All right, perfect. So in addition to making this dough, we're going to make this. We are going to make a chocolate whipped cream, which is incredibly good. It takes a little forethought to make. You have to start it the night before, which I did, but I'll show you how to make that. We're going to make a chocolate glaze, and we're going to make the ultimate chocolate eclair. Also, we're going to take and make essentially the same dough, but we're going to add a whole bunch of Gruyere cheese to it. Then we're egg wash them a little bit and put a little bit of Gruyere on top. When we cook them, they're going to puff up and we'll have these great cheese balls. Those are a nice savory addition, but in addition to that, we're going to make a crab salad using some real crab, some herbs, and fill those. It should be awesome. So we're almost there. Let me make sure our butter's melted. All right, so I don't want this to boil over, so I'm going to turn it down a little bit, but I want it to be very hot. So I'm going to scoop a cup of flour, just about a cup of flour. I'm going to do a little less because this is kind of compact the way it is in the bowl. And I'm going to dump it right in here. And now I need to stir. This is going to look like a clumpy mess, but it'll come together. So what we're making here kind of is a roux. You've seen me make roux many, many times in this show. So we're making a roux thickened sauce that we're going to add a whole bunch of eggs to. All right, and this should take 2 or 3 minutes just to get it to come together really well and pull away from the sides of the pan. And we're almost there, actually. So I'm going to turn our heat down just a little bit more, just so we're not cranking. Because as you've heard me say before, when we're cooking roux, it's really important that we cook our flour because that's going to help give us a nice texture when we're done. So we want to just make sure this gets a chance to cook. All right, at this point, we're going to take this dough and add it to this bowl. Now there's 2 reasons why I'm adding it to the bowl. If we were making a much bigger batch, you had to make a bunch of these, I would totally do it on my mixer with the paddle attachment and beat it up. You could do them in this as well with this size batch, but this pan is really hot. And it will actually cook our eggs too fast. So by putting it in a bowl, 2 things. 1, you guys can see as I mix into it, but also we don't have that residual heat of the pan that's going to cook our eggs. So what we want to do is slowly and patiently add our eggs, 1 egg at a time or so. and beat it up. And a wooden spoon is the best tool for this job. And see how it looks all loose and chunky? That's okay, that's exactly what it should look like. But we're not gonna add our next egg until that first egg is completely incorporated. See how that came together? Now we'll add our next egg. So it might seem a little bit tedious, but this is the way it's got to be to make sure that the eggs completely absorb. And also, as you look at it, you might notice that it's getting super wet, and you might not add all your eggs, because when you pipe it out, if it just falls down, that's not going to help you have a beautiful finished puff. Okay. So when we make our Gougeres, which are going to be our puffs with the cheese in them, we'll do this exact same process. We'll get all our eggs in, and then we're going to add a considerable amount of cheese to it. But we won't show you that, so you don't have to see me stand here and mix. But I wanted to show you this, just as the texture's changing as we go along. And I think this will take this last egg easily. So one of the really cool things about this dough is it's super versatile. I listed a couple things at the beginning you could do, but another awesome thing is to get a little bit of hot oil. At the restaurant we have a fryer, but you just take this in a pastry bag and just let it go right into the fryer or in a funnel, and you get actual funnel cakes that are incredibly good. You can even make gnocchi out of these, make a type of pasta. It's a very versatile dough. And there we go. So we just made choux paste, pate choux. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to get it ready to go in the oven. Oops. So I have a sheet pan here lined with non-slip baking mat, and I have a disposable pastry bag. Now I meant to have a much bigger pastry bag and some tips, but I forgot them. So I'm not gonna just say, no, we can't do the show today. So we're gonna modify what we do a little bit. Don't be intimidated because you don't have a piece of equipment that a recipe calls for. See if you can make a change on your own. All right, so we get a decent amount in there. Then I'm just gonna slide it down. Whenever you're filling a pastry bag, if you fold that top over like I did, it's a way to keep your hands from getting dirty. So you can do these in any shape, any size you want, but we're gonna make some little eclairs, so I'm just gonna take this and pipe them into strips like this. If you use a star tip, you'll get a little bit more texture in your finished product, but you don't need it. And you just pipe them out, and you can control how big they are by what pressure. See how I added a little bit too much right there? That got a little bit bigger. That's okay. See if I can fill this whole pan with this. Close enough. This will be the one that we eat. Who am I joking? We're going to eat them all. All right. So now if you want, you can just take your finger, and if you had a little bit of water, and just dab down the ends. But I'm not even worried about that. They can pop up a little bit. So we're gonna take these are gonna go into a 425 degree oven. It's really important that they go in a very hot oven, because what we're looking for is that the water that's in here is gonna turn to steam. That steam is gonna puff it up. Then those eggs are gonna solidify, and that's what's gonna hold the bubble. So we're gonna do 10 minutes at 425 degrees. Then we're going to turn it down to 375 for another 8, 10, 12 minutes until it's done. So while those are in the oven, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to clean up a little bit and work some of our fillings and toppings that are going to go on these. All right, so I cleaned up our mess a little bit. It's been about 12 minutes, so it's time to come over here. We can take a quick peek at these. They're starting to brown a little bit, but we don't want them to brown a ton. So we're going to turn the heat down. but you notice that I'm leaving the oven door open a little bit. So what we need to do is get this 425 degree heat out of the oven and let it drop down to 350. But we don't want to open the oven all the way, because if a bunch of cool air rushes in, there's a chance our puffs will drop down. So we'll just leave this open for a couple more seconds to let the heat drop down, and then we're good. We'll let that go for another 8 minutes or so. We're gonna check them out and just see how brown they get. All right, next project, or two projects, are going to be our chocolate whipped cream and our chocolate glaze. So for our chocolate whipped cream, we're gonna start out, and I have here half a cup of heavy cream. I have a quarter of a cup of milk, and I have an ounce and a half of granulated sugar. So we're gonna let this come up to a simmer. Be careful when this comes to a simmer, because it will totally boil on you. Now, it might seem a little odd to heat whipped cream and to add milk to whipped cream, but what we're going to do is we're going to add this, which is 5 ounces of chocolate. So I did this last night, actually. I made all this, and then you let it sit in the refrigerator for a good, at least overnight, 12 hours or even longer. You can leave it for a couple days, and then we'll go ahead and whip it. Now, for our other one, let's turn this guy on, and we're going to start with half a cup of heavy cream. So this is going to be the glaze that we dip the top of the Eclair shells in. And I've got a half a cup of sugar. And I've got a little bit of corn syrup here, about 2 ounces, which is just going to help with the finished texture. 2 ounces, quarter of a cup, in that ballpark. A little trick I like to use when I'm doing corn syrup is I'll use a little nonstick spray and spray my bowl. That way it pours out real quick. I didn't have any, so I didn't use it. But it's a great thing whenever you're doing something sticky. It'll work with honey too. All right, so if I were to step away from this, this would boil over, so I'm ready to turn the heat down on this guy. Actually, we can turn our heat down off. One of the beauties of the induction range is that now there's no more heat coming in. It stopped generating heat, so I can add my chocolate directly to this. And so for this, I'm using a bittersweet chocolate. You saw I added a ton of sugar to it anyways, but that way it's not, I don't want these to be sicky sweet for our whipped cream. And you want to stir this pretty much constantly. Let's turn this guy back up a bit until it gets nice, smooth consistency. All right, and there we go. Now we would take this and refrigerate it for a good 12 hours or so. Now over here, I just want to mix this together, make sure it all dissolves. And you can see that sugar's actually melting right in there. And so we added granulated sugar to this. We want to make sure it dissolves completely. And I think we're there. So once again, we're going to shut off our heat before it boils over on us. And then we can add our chocolate to this. And we want to mix this in. So I'm using chocolate chips for both of these here. If you happen to have a better quality chocolate at home, by all means, use a block of chocolate. Make sure you chop it up about this size or a little bit smaller, because what you want it to do is to melt quickly and evenly. Good, so it still looks a little chunky. It hasn't come super smooth, so we just let it keep going. This is actually a glaze that you don't have to refrigerate it. You can leave it out. If it happens to be really cool in your home and it's not as loose as you want it to be, if you want to dip it or pour it on something, just warm it up a little bit. You can put it in a water bath to warm it up very carefully on the stove or very carefully in the microwave in very short bursts. All right, so this is going to be our dip that we're going to dip our chocolate in. This is going to be our whipped cream. So I think we're just about there. Let me take a peek at where we're at. Just a little bit of golden brown. I think we need another 3 or 4 minutes. So we'll take another break. When we come back, we'll pull those out. We're going to make our crab salad, and we'll be almost. All right, our second tray, all done. Look at these golden brown beauties. They puffed up nicely. They're still a little bit hot. And pop these over here. We'll let them cool off a little bit. Ideally, we want to poke them real quick. It'll allow some of the steam to get out so they get kind of dry. But we can do that. We'll skip that. But if you're doing it at home and not on TV, you should do that. So over here, I'm going to make the dough for our Gruyere filled puffs. So here I have all the same ingredients we started with before. I've got butter, I've got salt, more salt, a little bit of sugar just for a little bit of sweetness. To this, I'm also going to add a little bit of fresh nutmeg and a couple twists of black pepper. So at this point, just like we did last time, we add our flour all at once. And we want to mix this in right away. And remember, our goal here is that we're cooking our roux. So our heat's a little too high because I can see it sticking on the bottom already real quick. So I want to turn it down. And we're going to just stir it until it forms a nice, smooth dough. And it really should be in there 2 to 3 minutes. This has a whole different fragrance to it with the addition of that fresh nutmeg. You can smell the pepper a little bit too. But yeah, that's looking good. All right, then I'm going to put this right into this bowl here. And then spread it down so it cools off a little bit. But we're going to do the same thing. Add our eggs one at a time. And so what we're using is Gruyere cheese. So Gruyere is Alpine cheese. It's a Swiss cheese. It's got, if you think of Swiss cheese, it has a little bit of bite. This isn't really the same thing, but this definitely has a bite to it. This is a nice one. It actually has a little bit of funk to it too, which I think is going to go really well into our finished dish here. First one's incorporated. We'll go with our second. Perfect. So I made a mistake when I was telling you the ingredients for the whipped cream. I said half a cup of cream. Don't do a half a cup of cream because you'll just end up with like ganache. It's half a quart of cream. And then we'll whip that later. I want to make sure I made that correction for you. So my hand is actually tired from doing this. Oh, I did too. No, I'll try to get them incorporated. So if you want, by all means, use your mixer with a paddle attachment and mix it just until it's incorporated. You don't want to beat it up too much. Taking a little bit of work because I dumped both of those in there. There we go. I just want to add whatever whites were left in there. So we're going to add about a cup of Gruyere cheese to this. So I'm going to wing it, but I'm going to say that that's about a cup. So now this is cooled down enough that it's not going to completely melt our cheese and it's going to get all gooey and runny. But it still is warm enough that it's going to incorporate nicely. All right, so with a couple more stirs, this is all set. We'll pipe this out in a little bit, but I want to make our crab salad. So crab salad is like lobster salad or seafood salad or whatever. So I thought that would go really well inside of these puff pastries. So we're going to start off with a little bit of celery that I rinsed already. I want to cut it really, really fine. I love celery. I love the flavor of it. I love the crunch of it. But I don't like it when it's huge. Some people just don't take the time and energy to cut their celery real fine. And I think a big hunk of celery in like a lobster roll or something like that, it's just overpowering. powering, but a little bit, just for some texture and flavor, is outstanding. All right. So there's our celery, not too much. Put a little bit in there. Oops, I just messed that up. I put that in our egg bowl, so we don't want to do that because this is going to be contaminated with raw eggs, so that'll go away. This is the bowl we're supposed to use, so I'll cut some more celery real quick. And so we're using a lump crab meat here. So for this, we're not necessarily looking to have huge hunks of crab. So don't spend tons of money on huge hunks of crab. You know, if you happen to be in a place where you can go pick your own crab, then by all means, go catch some crab and pick them or get fresh crab. But canned crab is an acceptable substitute. So I'm gonna squeeze in some lemon juice, just through my fingers to catch any seeds. So this is gonna give a little bit of acidity, which is gonna go really well in here. Always want a little bit of pepper. We're gonna hit it with a little bit of salt. And that beep was our oven warming up, so I just heated it back up to 425 for when we do our next show paste. And then I'm gonna cut up some chives. I really like chives. They have you get that oniony flavor, but it's not intense. Just very mild, and I think they go really well with something like this. Sometimes you want a big, bold onion. Not with crab, though. All right, good. And so I have, oops, I forgot. We're gonna add some mayonnaise here. Add a couple tablespoons. I'm just gonna squeeze it in there. You don't want it to be super mayonnaise-y. Mayonnaise is just there to provide a little bit of fat and to help hold it all together. And then we'll add all of our crab. So we'll take a quick break. I'm gonna mix this all together and finish our salad. I'm gonna get our other dough piped out here. We'll get those in the oven. And then it's almost time for Arthur to come up here so he has to finish these up and for him to take a sample. Welcome back. So now I piped these out, brushing them with a little bit of egg wash. This is just one egg with a couple tablespoons of water. And what this is going to do, it's going to help give us a little bit of brown color, but it's also going to help the cheese stick. Beautiful. So as you remember, I saved a little bit of our Gruyere cheese to put on top. And we're just going to take that and just put a very small amount on top. Because a little bit will fall, a little bit of it will melt down as we go. And so I reheated my oven back up to 425. We're going to cook these the same, about 10 minutes at 425. Then we'll crack the oven a little bit, excuse me, and we'll let the temperature come down, and we'll just finish them until they're just golden brown. And these are great. These are something that we can eat just as a snack all by themselves, or fill them like we're going to do. Beautiful. So those are going to go in for 10 minutes or so. Let me move this out of the way. So while you were gone, I asked Donna to go down and grab a KitchenAid mixer. And I took the cream that I made last night at home, so that's that mixture of mostly heavy cream, a little bit of milk, some chocolate, and some sugar, and whipped it up, and it whipped beautifully. And so this is going to be the filling in our ultimate chocolate eclairs. So I have another pastry bag here. You can do this with a spoon if you don't have a pastry bag, but these, I got these in the kitchen equipment aisle of the local supermarket. And this is so good. Donna actually had a little sample a couple minutes ago. She said it tastes like the best chocolate ice cream, which I think is pretty good. All right, so I arrange it so all the bottoms are close to me. So I'm going to take and just pipe Fill them as full as you want. That one needs a little more. Oh, these are going to be awesome. And you can see we've got, might as well use all this, right? Nobody's going to know that it looks messy when we put a top on it. So we've got this whole tray of these that are all set. So the next thing I'm going to do is grab our glaze, which you can see has a little bit of a skin on top. It's just started to firm up a little bit. So I'm just going to warm it just a little bit to loosen it up. If this sat around for a long time and there was like a pretty thick skin on top, a little trick you can do without mixing that all in is put a little bit of water on top. And if you put some water on top, let it sit for a minute or two, then pour the water off. It'll actually make that top layer dissolve a little bit. You want to be careful when you're reheating this, when you're warming it up, because it is chocolate and it will burn on you. All right, we're just about there, I think. And then all we're going to do is take the tops, get them covered in chocolate, lay them right on top. Now you could also take it, set them up like that, and you could take your whisk or a spatula and kind of pour it on top too. You lose a little bit more this way, but either way. So I'm going to finish these up. We'll get our pastries out of the oven. We'll get Arthur up here. We'll see what he thinks of those by themselves, but also stuffed with that beautiful crab stuffing. And I know he's going to love the ultimate chocolate eclair. Hey, Arthur.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks again for having me here at Hudson Appliance for Wicked Good Food.
You're always welcome. You always bring good things.
Oh, I try. Today is all about pate choux.
Pasta choux.
Not pasta choux, pate choux. So it's a famous French word, right? All it means is little cream puffs. So what we did was we made this stuff called choux paste, which is a paste. It's not what you make shoes out of.
Yeah.
But when you bake it, it puffs up. So we made these little puffs first.
All right.
For these ones, we filled them with a chocolate whipped cream, which I actually started at home last night. Which is awesome, great texture. And then we made a little chocolate glaze for the top.
All right.
These are called Gougeres. It's a French, almost like roll, but it's the same thing, but it has a bunch of cheese added to it.
Okay.
It also has a little nutmeg, a little bit of pepper. And here we took those same Gougeres and we filled them with a crab salad.
Ooh, that's one of my favorites.
All right, well, let's see. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with the cheese one.
All right, that sounds good to me. So these ones are still warm. They just came out. And beautiful texture on the inside.
Oh, this is good. This is good.
You just barely taste the nutmeg. Cheese is great.
Very good.
Stay savory and go for a bite of these.
Let's shoot for the crab.
All right.
Oh, that's delicious.
And Gougeres have a little crunch to the top, which gives a little contrast in texture.
Yep.
And then last but not least, you want to try one of these eclairs?
Sure.
You want me to cut one in half? Let's do
cut
that,
one in half.
Actually. Less chance to make a mess.
Well, I'll make everybody think I'm on a diet that way.
What do you think?
Now that's
Wicked good.